Hi everyone, welcome back to Digital Dreambox. Today we're continuing on with our retro gas pump modeling tutorial, and we're going to make the fuel nozzle. So let's jump right in. Alright, let's start. The first thing we're going to do is organize our scene a bit. Open up your outliner and also open up your channel box. What I want to do is box select everything, press Ctrl G, that'll group it, and now let's name this. I'm going to call this gas pump group. And then what we can do is press W to bring up our move tool. And I want to bring this pivot back to the bottom. So I'm going to hold down D, then V, drag this down, and then I'm going to hold down X and move my cursor just on the origin. So now it's sitting on that ground plane. Next, we want to delete the history for this. So click on this one here. And we can also freeze the transformations of all the sub-objects, right? So we'll click this one. And then Maya will also let you know that it can't freeze transformations on instances, so these number dials, which is fine. Select your group, go over here to the channel box at the bottom, click on the last icon, and that'll put it on its own layer. Double click the layer, and we're going to name this as well. So gas pump layer. And then just click save when you're done. Now what we can do is toggle this visibility, and we can hide it from the viewport. Let's close the outliner, close the channel box, and take a look at our gas pump reference. So the nozzle. The one I like the most is this one over here, and let me show you. It has this old style look. It's almost a bit organic the way the metal bends. You can see it tapers in here at the top, so we'll take that into account. We have the gas valve at the back that gets released, so it releases the gas from the bottom, and then the trigger over here. And this gas nozzle is very similar to, I think, this one, a couple others, I think this one as well, and these ones. All right, so let's figure out how we're going to do this. We're going to add a cube into the scene. So I'm going to show you how I'll make it from a cube. And with the cube, one of the things we can do is let's go into the face mode. When we're in face mode, we can select a face, hold down shift, and we have that smart extrude option, right? I'm just going to undo that. And I'm going to press 3 on the keyboard. 3 allows us to preview it, what it would look like smoothed out. And now if I hold down shift, extrude, you can see that shape change, right? Just gonna undo that though. I'm gonna press 1 on the keyboard. So 1 and 3 is what we normally do to swap between the two views. I'm gonna press 2 though. 2 allows us to see the cage of the cube as well as the preview. So it allows us to see in real time what's happening to both of the shapes. So now I'm gonna press, hold down shift and do a smart extrude, right? And you can see now we can see both, right? So I'm gonna just extrude this and scale it in, right? And now let's start modeling this. Select the face over here as well. Go into your move tool, hold down shift, do a smart extrude, and then we'll scale that down. This side, maybe I'll scale it down a little further. Maybe move it down, move it out a little bit. So I'm gonna press 1 so you guys can see what's happening. And here is the cube that's been extruded. That's the preview. And now let's go back to 2. Let's work on the bottom next. Select that face. Let's do a smart extrude again. And let's scale that in. This time I want that face at the bottom to be roughly the diameter of the handle, the grip area. So let's go into the move tool and let's do another smart extrude, right? And this time I'm going to, if I extrude too far out, you can see it tapers, right? Comes to a point. We need holding edges. So one way we can do that is just stop around here and do another smart extrude. There we go. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. Do another extrude. And then let's flare this out a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude one more time down. So we have something like this. All right. I think that looks pretty good. Let's work on the top next, right? Select that top face. Doing a smart extrude here. And what I want to do is give this a bit of a rotation. So pressing E, I want to hover over this axis and just rotate that. And then what we want to do is move it forward a bit to get this angle. And you can see the form of it already taking shape pretty nicely, right? Next thing I want to do is scale that in a bit, right? Because it needs to flare in. And I'm going to press W, and you see now we have a bit of an issue. Our axis is in the world space, right? World axis. And one way we can get around this is holding down Shift, the right mouse button, and extruding this way. But what I'm going to do is double click the Move tool and change the axis orientation to component mode, right? And you can see that change there. Just going to close this up. And now let's extrude again. So hold down Shift, extrude out. And for this part, I'm just going to scale it out a bit, just from the center. And then let's do another extrude. So go back to your Move tool, extrude out. And then this time, I'm going to scale it in. And that allows us to taper in and out. And then let's go into the Move tool. Let's do another extrude. And then also maybe one more small extrude. Actually, that should be good like that. All right. Let's go back into object mode, press 1 on the keyboard. We have this, right? And this was our preview. And what we want to do now is delete these faces. So let's go into face mode, shift select all these faces. I'm going to press 3 on the keyboard so you guys can see what it looks like when we delete it, right? Because right now it's rounding out. I'm going to press delete, and there we go. Those faces are deleted. And then up here, we have an option as well. We can go into vertex mode if we want, and maybe give this a little bit of a rotation. I think that looks pretty good like that, right? Now let's press 1 and go back into object mode and smooth this out. So select your object, hold down Shift, right mouse button, and oops, I don't have it selected properly. So select your object, Shift, right mouse button, and smooth. There we go. And over here, we can look for areas where we could maybe delete some more of the geometry, the edges. One area that I can see is just this edge loop here, which is, I think, this one, right? I'm gonna hold down Control, press Delete, and then I'm gonna double click this edge and maybe just slide it up. So hold down Control and Shift and bring it up a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. Everything else we pretty much need. Now what we wanna do is maybe close up these areas. Gonna add a cylinder into the scene. And I'm gonna press T on the keyboard, drop the subdivisions to 6. And the reason I'm doing that is that bolts, like first let's hold down J, rotate this. Bolts usually have 6 sides, right? These kind of coverings. And let's just move it so that it's covering this back piece. And we can scale it in a bit as well. So there we go. And I think that looks pretty good right about there. Let's duplicate that, Control D, and move it to the front here. And for this piece, what we want to do is go into face mode, right? Maybe this one I can make a bit thicker. Maybe a bit bigger as well. And let's grab the faces at the front. Hold down Tab to do a drag select. And now I'm going to go into my scale tool, hold down Shift, extrude this in a bit. Go into my Move tool again, do a Smart Extrude. And then hold down Shift again. This time I want this one to be a little bit smaller. This will be the pin. And then what we can do is extrude this out. Back into the scale tool, right? Here we go. And this will be the end piece. Once you're done, just hold down Shift, right mouse button, and bevel. We can bevel that face, and we'll give it one segment and maybe play with the fraction a little bit. I think that's fine. Okay, now let's cover up the bottom as well. Gonna go into object mode right now, and let's add a cylinder into the scene. Again, pressing T on the keyboard and dropping this to about 6. Gonna bring this down to about here. Let's scale it down and cover this up, right? You might be hearing some birds on my balcony right now. They're chirping away, but hopefully they're not too loud. It's like modeling in nature. Just pretend that's happening. All right, so that looks pretty good right now. This one here, the hose will connect into, so I might even make this a bit bigger, but for now, I think that's fine. Okay, now let's work on the top now. up here, right, we have this edge, and I can double click this, and let's extrude that in. So hold down Shift, extrude, and I'm going to bring it to about here. Let's go back into edge mode. Something to note is that these edges, right, this six-sided edge loop isn't the same as a six-sided cylinder. We can make it a little more round if we want to though, right? Hold down Shift, right mouse button, and circularize components, right? And you'll see that change. All right, go into your move tool, and what we can do now is hold down Shift, do a little bit of an extrude, and maybe go into our scale tool. This time we want to extrude it in roughly the diameter of that end piece, so that spout area. And what I'm going to do is maybe just scale it in just a little bit more. All right, now what we need to do is give it another extrude. And so hold down Shift, extrude, so we have a second extrusion, then let go, hold down Shift, right mouse button, merge collapse edges, and then merge edges to center. There we go. All right, let's go into object mode. Now we need that end piece, so that spout. We're gonna use the curve tool to help make it, right? So let's go into the Create tab and choose Curve Tools, CV Curve Tool. Let's go into our side profile, which is our front view. And now I'm just going to turn on Wireframe Unshaded. We want to draw out that spout, right? So I'm going to click here and click here to here, and then roughly to about here. This piece, by the way, is roughly the same distance as from here to here. Just something to note for most of these fuel nozzles. When you're done, you can adjust these points as well. So hold down the right mouse button, go into Control Vertex, and we can pretty much move these if we want to adjust them. I think it looks pretty good like this, but yeah, I'm gonna leave it alone. So I'm gonna go back into our perspective view. You may want to adjust yours though, just so you know. Go into object mode. Now what we want to do is move this pivot to the end here. Hold down D, then V, and move it over here. And then what I want to do is snap this to that middle point. Hold down V and drag it to here. All right, now let's select our mesh, right? Hold down the right mouse button, go into face mode, and what we want to do is grab these faces. So hold down Tab and do a drag select. Once you have all of those, Shift select your curve so that you have both selected. And then what we want to do is hold down Shift, right mouse button, and extrude. And what Maya will do will extrude those faces from the start of the curve to the end. And what we can do is give it some divisions. And what we want is to give it enough divisions to sell this curve, right? So that it's not too angular, but not use too many. I'm gonna go with 7, and we're also gonna delete the faces at the front there. All right, now let's make the guard for the handle guard. All right, let's add a cube into the scene, and I'm gonna move it over here. By the way, I've recorded this many times to try and get this time down, right? So I'll do my best, but it may be a long video by the end of it, so sorry about that. Let's scale this up, and I'm gonna go into face mode and box select these faces and just delete those. So we just have these. And then I'm gonna go into object mode and just move this roughly into place. And for the distance here, the width, just gonna maybe scale that in a little bit. I think that looks pretty good like that though. Make sure that those vertices are in there, and now we can adjust these ones. So go into vertex mode. I'm gonna move these ones down. You can see that our move tool is still in that component mode. Let's double click our move tool, go to component, or actually what we can do is just reset that. Close that up, and now we can move this down. There we go. And what I wanna do over here is I wanna move this one out a little bit to give it a bit of an angle. It's a little bit different from a reference. We're not doing it 1-to-1, but I like the angle of this, and some fuel pumps have this kind of shape, so it's okay. What I'm going to do though is just move that back in a little bit. And I think that's okay. Maybe we can move this section in a little bit as well. All right, let's bevel this top edge. Go into edge mode, select this, and Shift right mouse button, bevel. And then what we want to do here is just play with the fraction a little bit till we get something like this. I think that looks fine. And then what I want to do is grab this edge and this one, and press G to repeat. I'll make another bevel, and I'm going to play with the fraction of that again, right? Essentially what I want is a little rounding at the top there, but more of a straight area here. And then what we can do now is grab this bottom edge as well and give this a small bevel. Pressing G to repeat and just playing with that fraction. And then what I want to do is grab that face at the bottom here and extrude that. So I'm going to go into my scale tool, hold down Shift, do a smart extrude, and just move this roughly over here and maybe scale it out a bit. This section here, I'm going to delete that face, and it's going to essentially have an area that helps secure this gas pump if we need it. Right? Let's go into object mode and let's extrude this now. Hold down Shift, right mouse button, and extrude. And what we can do is give this a bit of thickness. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Next, I would just want to show you there's an area of the gas pump nozzle, which is over here, which contains a hinge-like area, which allows this gas pump release handle to work with the trigger. So let's work on this. So what we're going to do is let's go into object mode, select this, and we'll grab our multi-cut tool, right? Holding down Shift, right mouse button, multi-cut, and let's add a cut right about here. Let's go into that side profile again. And what I'm going to do is select our object, and then I'm going to grab some of these vertices and move them outwards. There we go. I think that looks pretty good like that. Maybe I'll just move these a little bit over here. And this one I'll move maybe out a little bit as well. Oop, that was just my alarm. Sorry about that. And then move this to here. Right, so that will hide that hinge area. I think that looks pretty good like that. We'll leave it. Let's go back into our perspective view. And what I want to do now is I want to grab these faces and just duplicate them. We're going to use them later. So hold down Shift. Let's make sure we have none selected in the back. Shift, right mouse button, and duplicate face. And now if we open up our outliner, over here, we have this second piece of geometry, right, that we can use later. I'm just going to hide it though. Press H on the keyboard to hide it. And over here, I want to create a bit of an extrusion. And before I do that, I want to add another cut right about here. Right, there we go. And then let's go into face mode, select these ones here, and let's extrude that. Shift, right mouse button, extrude. And then what we want to do is just give this a bit of an offset. There we go. And then you'll see what I mean. We needed this to be the way it is right here. But let's select these faces now and let's extrude them in. Shift, right mouse button, extrude. And we'll just give it negative thickness. Let's go into our side profile again over here. And let's turn on X-ray mode. Go into vertex component mode, I should say, and we'll move this over here. And then this one, we'll just move up a little bit. And then over here, this part is fine. Maybe over here, we'll just move this a little bit. All right, so we have a section here that is a little bit on the inside, right? It's extruded for us. And this allows us to put a piece in there and make it believable in terms of how does this work, the engineering of it, right? What I want to do though is down here, the reason why we added this extra extrusion down here is that we can grab, actually, let's open up the modeling toolkit. We can go into the target weld now and weld this to here. Actually, I'm just going to, we just have to make sure that nothing else is selected. So let's go into object mode, make sure nothing's selected. Now let's select this piece, go into target weld and grab this vertex, weld it to here, and grab this one and weld it to here. There we go. So now it slides out a little more cleanly. And then let's go back into object mode. Let's select the face that we had hidden before. Press H on the keyboard to unhide it. And then what I'm going to do is close the modeling toolkit, just gonna close the outliner for now as well. And I'm gonna scale this piece in. You can see that our pivot's over here. Let's just center it. And then I'm gonna scale it in a bit, right? And over here at the top section, what I'm going to do is grab these vertices, go into my move tool, hold down Control and Shift, and just slide this down. And now let's give this a bit of an extrusion. Before we do that though, let's add a couple cuts. Let's go into our multi-cut tool, and I'm going to add a cut right here and here. And let's move this out a little bit. So grab these vertices and move them out. And then we can also grab these ones and move these out. There we go. And then we'll bevel this in a second. Let me just take a look at it. All right, let's go into edge mode. Try and finish this pretty shortly. Time is increasing. All right, let's give this an extra segment and play with the fraction a bit. And I think that looks pretty good like that. And let's go back into here and extrude this now. Shift, right mouse button, extrude. And let's give this a bit of thickness. And then play with this area a little bit as well. So what I'm gonna do in this area is go into our side view. And let's go into vertex mode again. And over here, I want to grab some of these vertices and actually move them in. Right, so it feels like there's some geometry in there that's working inside, right? So there's an hinge area. And over here, I just want to play with this area or move some of these as well. Bring this over here and maybe bring this down a little bit as well. Right, and then over here, we can probably just flatten this. So scale that in. And now we have a hinge that works with here. What I'm going to do is maybe just move this down a bit as well. Oops. Move this down a bit over here and then scale these two. There we go. Let's grab this object here next. Go into vertex mode. Just gonna turn off wireframe unshaded. And then I'm gonna grab these and move these right about right here. All right. Now let's take a look. I think that looks pretty good. And what we're going to do next is just box select everything, open up our outliner, Control G to group it, and we'll just name this as well. So double click that, we'll call it gas pump nozzle group. All right, time, we did get up there, but I think we did a pretty decent job with this. It's a really tough tutorial to keep down, but what I'm gonna do is just close this up, maybe just delete the history of all of this as well. And go up here, go File, Increment and Save, so don't forget to save. And this is what we have so far, and we will see you in the next tutorial when we finish modeling the gas pump. See you guys then.